Hello and welcome one and all. This is the American Patriots Channel. This channel is dedicated to addressing America's challenges. America, there has been a great injustice that has manifested itself during the last 60 years. It has affected all of us, and yet there are some who are unaware that it exists. Like a thief in the night, it has taken our livelihood from our hands, and for many, it has stolen hope for a secure future. Yet, it has a name, which is economic inequality. Today, we begin the process to cast this injustice from our land so that it will never again cause harm. Let's go to work. I'll be back in a moment after this brief introduction. Welcome back. I'm Jeff Penrod, your host. As a retired nuclear power plant chemist, I used to solve some of the most technical problems. So today, I'm using my skill to solve America's problems. I consider myself, kind of laughingly, America's doctor, but more seriously, I am working to cure what ails our country. The medicine that I use is truth. I will pull back the curtain and expose what lies behind these issues so that we can better understand them and fix them. Today is an exciting day because we have an opportunity before us to benefit all Americans. This is the start of a great journey where we will be addressing our nation's most pressing needs. If the founders of our nation were here today, they would be proud of us and of what we are about to do. Today, we will address economic inequality. The title of this episode is America Will Defeat Economic Inequality. That process starts right now. The first thing that we need to do is define economic inequality. Economic inequality is a significant disparity in the distribution of either income or wealth. Income is the amount of money people are paid, and wealth is the amount of wealth that people own. So it has two components to it. So let's look into these components a little bit further, starting with income inequality. This graph, which comes to us from the Economic Policy Institute, tracks the growth of wages in the United States during the years 1979 until 2018. The dark blue line represents the high earners, the medium blue line represents the middle earners, and the light blue line represents the low earners. As you can see, the high earners have had their wages increase far more rapidly than anyone else. So what happens when high earners start out with high wages and then their wages increase more rapidly than anyone else? What you get are examples of egregious overcompensation, examples where a person is paid an astronomical amount of money. Here are a couple of examples. You may not have heard of him, but Ray Irani was a top executive in the Occidental Petroleum Corporation for about 20 years. And during that time, he was paid, wait for it, $1.2 billion. That's billion with a B. Another example is Terry Bradshaw, who is a famous quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. he won 4 Super Bowl rings. During his rookie year in 1970, he was paid a sum of $35,000. Today, a rookie quarterback would be paid $25 million. So what does this mean for us? When someone is paid so much, does that cause any problems? Does it affect us at all? Well, these companies that pay these individuals such exorbitant wages, they have to get the money from somewhere. They can't print the money, and money doesn't grow on trees, so they have a few options. One option would be to raise prices on the products that they sell. What that does is it makes everyone pay more for the products. That's Robin Hood in reverse, where they're taking money from the lower and middle income people and giving it to the rich. That is unacceptable. Another example, and see if you recognize this one if you're out there in the workforce. A company will lay off or let go some of its employees in order to save money. But what happens to the workload of those employees who are no longer there? Well, that workload is put on the backs of the remaining employees. So guess what? If you're still working for that company, you took a pay cut and you didn't even realize it. But what happened was you used to be a single worker doing a single job, but now you're a single worker doing 2 jobs. So you got a pay cut. And another example, and see if this one rings a bell too, a company can cut benefits, such as medical coverage. Have you seen that before? So these are the things that can happen that allow a company to pay certain individuals exorbitant amounts of money. They do affect us, and they do cause problems and harm to us by taking from us. All right, so that's the story with income inequality. Let's move on now to wealth inequality and see what's going on there. This graph comes to us from the Pew Research Center, and it tracks the wealth of the upper, middle, and lower income brackets in the United States during the years 1983 until 2016. As you can see, the upper income bracket has gained substantial wealth during that period of time, whereas the other 2 brackets have lost some of their share of the wealth in the country. What's important to note here is that the lower income bracket is losing wealth, and they are the ones that can least afford to do so. More and more over time, they are struggling to put food on the table and meet their very basic needs. This is intolerable and must stop. All right, so that's the picture of the wealth issue in this country and shows what's going on there. But I bet you think that at least if someone is making a lot of money and has a lot of wealth, that they're paying a lot of taxes too, right? Well, not so fast. Let's look at the next graph. This graph comes to us from the Washington Post, and it tracks the effective tax rates of 2 groups of people. One is the 400 richest families, that's represented with the red line, and the second group are the poorest 50% of the families in this country, tracked with the gray line. Back in 1960, the poorest families paid altogether about 22% of their income in taxes of some sort or another, and those taxes include federal, state, and local, all 3. But then as time went on, their portion that they were paying went up a little bit, up into the mid to upper 20s, and then finally ended up at about 24%. So they're paying about 24% of their income in taxes, all combined. Now the 400 richest families started out in 1960 paying about 57% of their total income in taxes. But since then, that percentage has gone down and down and down. And in 2018, as you can see, they were paying a lower rate of taxes than the poorest families in this country. This is entirely unacceptable. Taxes should be based on the ability to pay, and obviously the 400 richest families in our country have far more ability to pay than the poorest half. America, our system is broken and it needs to be fixed. Before we go on, though, I wanted to dispel a rumor that's been out there for quite some time, and it's called the trickle-down theory. What it says is, if you give more money to wealthy people, either in terms of more wages, as we've seen, that's what's going on now, or in terms of tax cuts, which also we've seen that going on now, it says that those people will save and invest it, and that will cause greater economic growth and more jobs, and it will help everyone. Well, the truth is, there have been several studies that clearly show that doesn't happen. That's false. Here's what really happens. If a wealthy person receives more money by way of greater wages or cuts in their taxes, they'll save and invest it. That's true. But that makes them more wealthy, and it does very little to help anyone else. However, if a middle or lower income family receives more money by way of higher wages or lower taxes, they're going to spend it. And when they spend it, that increases economic activity, it creates more jobs, and it helps everyone. That's what we need to be shooting for, not giving big tax cuts to the rich, because that only helps them. And that's the truth. So now that we've seen the whole picture, you've got it all. There it is. That's all I have as far as the picture. It's obviously in need of some help. It needs a little artificial resuscitation. The patient is not doing very well. So what's the cause of all of these problems then? All these inequalities? Well, there's one word, and that word is capitalism. Capitalism is a free market system, and I mean free. It's wide open. It's like the Wild Wild West, because there's very little regulation. There's very little in the way of rules out there. There's some, but not many. So if you're out there producing a product, you have to go head to head with every other company out there that's producing that same product. And guess what? If your product costs too much, or if it has inferior quality, you will lose revenue. People won't be buying it. And eventually you could go out of business. So the beauty of capitalism is the consumer wins big time, because they get the advantage of all of that competition. They get to have the highest quality products and the lowest prices on all of those products out there available to them. There is no other system in the world that favors the consumer as does capitalism. But as you've seen, capitalism has its flaws too. So for all you high earners out there who are benefiting from higher and higher wages and lower taxes, even though the picture looks rosy to you, I have some serious words for you, which is that the inequality that's building up in our country is causing something, which is it's a drumbeat that's getting louder and louder. And that drumbeat is a call for socialism. Socialism is where the government steps in and takes over all of the production of these products, and that way it regulates what goes on, and it would not include people making $1.2 billion. That doesn't occur in the socialist system. So if we want to solve these problems, it'll not only help the lower and middle brackets, but it will prevent us from possibly going to socialism, which will harm all of us, because Socialism is much less effective, and the consumer loses when they are living in a socialist system. Capitalism is where the consumer wins. So let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's not throw out capitalism. So what do we do then? How do we fix the problem if capitalism is so great for the consumer and yet it has some serious flaws? Well, think of it this way. If you had a road that was adjacent to a cliff, and every once in a while a car would skid off the road and careen down the cliff, what would you do? Would you close the road? I don't think so. I think what you would do is you'd put up a guardrail. And so that's what we need to do. We need to keep the best system, which is capitalism, and yet we need to put up some guardrails. We need to intervene where necessary. And as we've seen, in some areas, capitalism is broken. It doesn't need to be thrown out. It just needs to be fixed by us intervening and adjusting things, putting in some guardrails to prevent it from going over the cliff. So here's a description then, which is economic interventionism. Economic interventionism is an economic policy favoring government intervention in the market process to correct market failures and promote the general welfare of the people. Wow, that sounds exactly like what we need, and it is. Okay, so now that we're to the point where we understand the cause, which is capitalism, but we do understand too that if we had some intervention, that's what's needed to address these problems. Now's the time for us to set our goal. And so our goal is this: to significantly reduce economic inequality by intervening where necessary. That's it. That's our goal. So where do we need to intervene then? It's time to set up an action plan so that we can determine what changes need to be made to fix these issues. We've got a good bit of income and wealth inequality going on out there. It's getting worse, so time is of the essence. We need to step in and take care of this problem before it gets much worse. If you look at this chart here, coming to us from the Economic Policy Institute, it shows us between the years of 1917 till 2015 two trends. The first, in red, is union membership, and the second, in blue, is the share of income going to the high earners. Notice early on, union membership was low, and the share of income going to the high earners was pretty high. But somewhere around 1940, give or take, union membership went up significantly, and notice there seems to be a response from the high earner trend there. Their share of income went down. And then about 1960, union membership gradually started to decrease and continued to go on down. And sure enough, the income of the high earners started right back on up. There's a clear relationship between union membership and the wages of high earners. And we've seen that the wages of high earners are too high. They're out of proportion. So what fixes that, or helps to fix that, is union membership. Union membership gives the workers a voice. It gives them a seat at the table. Right now, the only ones that are setting the level of wages that are being paid are the executives in the company. And it's no surprise, they favor themselves. So they give themselves the big raises and everyone else not so much. That's because they're the only ones that have say-so. But in a union, the workers have some say-so too. All right, so we need to establish a union. What kind of union should it be, though? There again, we want to be smart and do a really good job of selecting the best option, the best tool to fix the problem. And if you're familiar with unions, I bet right now you're thinking, oh, I don't know, unions have some drawbacks. This is not necessarily so good. Well, you're right. So we're going to do it better. Traditional unions have had their day. Their time is over. As you can see from the graph that we just looked at, they are ineffective. They are no longer functioning to maintain income equality. We need a national union, a union that represents all workers, everyone below supervisory level. Whether they are an hourly paid worker or a salaried worker, as long as they are below supervisory level, this union is for them. And what it would do is it would represent them and protect them from wage, benefit, or working condition abuses. This union, which would be only one in the country, a national union, would not have the disadvantages of the traditional unions that we're familiar with. What are some of those disadvantages? Well, one is corruption. Every once in a while, we'll see where a union misuses their funds. They're corrupt, and that's what happens. Or a union may make untenable demands on a company. Demands a company just can't handle. It's just too much. And when that happens, the union and the company will not agree. The company will say, we just can't do that. And so then oftentimes there's a strike. Now, if you want to talk about a lose-lose situation, if you're a worker saying, hey, I want higher wages, and then you walk out on the company and let them sit idle for a few months, that costs the company money. That's the very company that you're trying to get more wages from, and yet you're causing them to be less able to increase your pay by going out on strike. Not to mention that while you're out on strike, you don't get paid either. And so, in some cases, businesses will actually have to close their doors because the union is asking for so much and just won't budge. Now, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. The company that you work for, you wanted them to meet certain demands, and by walking out, you made them go bankrupt. You lost your job. So these are some of the problems that have occurred with traditional unions. Well, this national union would be smarter than that and would be better than that. Not only that, but this union would have voluntary membership. If a worker wanted to join and be represented, they could, and if not, then not. This is a free country. You get to choose. Not only that, but this union would have no costs to the worker. Workers would pay no dues. The administrative costs for the union would be picked up by the federal government. Hence, this would be a national union, no cost, voluntary. It would give workers a voice in how things are run at their workplace. So that's one of the tools that we're going to use to help fix income inequality. Another tool is we need to require companies to pay workers profit-sharing bonuses. Executives get them, oh yeah, and some workers do too, but it's only fair if a company is doing well that they pay their workers a portion of the profits that they made. That makes the workers more motivated to help the company make more money because then they get bigger bonuses too. So that's a win-win where it's an incentive for everyone to do their best job, try to cut waste, and work towards enhancing the profit of the company. So everyone should receive profit-sharing bonuses. All right, so those are the tools that we can use to address income inequality. What about the tax inequality that we saw, where the richest families are paying less than the poorest families? There, we need to revise the tax code to set it to be based on ability to pay. That's as simple as that. That's what's needed. And if we do that, that'll fix that problem too. All right, so those are our actions. Number 1, establish a national union. Number 2, require that workers receive profit-sharing bonuses. And number 3, revise the tax code, which should set taxes to be levied based on ability to pay. This is a great day for America. We have just established effective steps that deal with one of our most serious problems, economic inequality. And yet there are some other things that we can do to make things even better. For example, we can work with our children and our education system to help them achieve the highest level of education possible. That will open doors of opportunity for them and allow them to maximize the amount of money that they can make. So that would help. In addition, our nation needs to continue to work towards what's called full employment, which means that we need to lower the unemployment level to as low as possible. That way, for every worker who's looking for a job, there's a job for that worker. Now, what we'll do in the next episodes is address those topics. There'll be one for education, and there'll be one for employment. But the next episode, we're going to cover political leadership. Because I'll bet some of you are thinking, wait a minute, hold on just a moment. These changes that you're suggesting, who can do that? Who can establish and fund a national union? Who can require workers to receive bonuses for company performance? Who can revise the tax code? Well, it's our legislators. So why haven't they done that so far? Remember, our politicians are there to serve us. That's their duty. Well, the fact is they have failed to do their duty. They have helped us very little, when in reality they should have been making changes like this all along, which really get the job done. So next episode, it's going to be the 4th of July all over, because there is going to be some fireworks. I am going to pull back the curtain and expose what goes on with our political leaders. However, I don't want you to think that I'm saying that our political leaders are bad people. Not at all. What I'm saying is that they work under a system that makes it very difficult for them to truly serve us. It handicaps them so severely that they can only do very little, when in reality they need to do so much more. So it'll be interesting next time, so don't miss it. All right, well, please spread the word about this channel. Tell your friends and tell your family so that we can work together to solve America's issues. And in addition, if you have any comments, I appreciate hearing from you, so please put those down in the comment section. Well, until next time, I have a thought for you, which is this. It is time for us to join together, hand in hand, and raise our voices. After all, it's not presidents, nor governors, nor congressmen or women that are rulers of this democracy. Instead, it is we, the voters. We can do this. Well, that's all I have for today. So until next time, God bless America. See you then.